On February 12, 2026, Bloomberg got their hands on a piece of paper they were never supposed to see, a secret memo, a classified document straight from inside the Kremlin. This piece of paper was being passed around by the most powerful people in Russia, and what is written on that page is the exact reason your portfolio is bleeding. If you hold silver, if you hold gold, if you watched silver rocket all the way to $121 and then violently crash down to $64, this memo is the answer key. It explains everything. It explains the 37% crash on January 30th. It explains why gold fell over $1,000 in a heartbeat. Here's the secret: Russia is begging to come back. Think about that for a second. This is the same country that spent the last 4 years screaming that the US dollar is dead. They told us BRICS was the future. They told us the world was changing. But now, according to this leak, they are quietly asking America for forgiveness. And they aren't coming empty-handed. They are putting a deal on the table. A massive deal, the biggest economic offer anyone has ever seen. $12 trillion. We are talking about oil, gas, nuclear power, artificial intelligence, and rare earth minerals like lithium and platinum. They are offering all of it, and in exchange, they have one simple request. Just one. Let us use the US dollar again. This changes the entire game. This isn't just politics on the news. This is your money. This is your silver stack. And if you don't understand this deal, you are flying blind. By the time this video ends, you are going to know exactly what is happening behind the curtain and, more importantly, what you need to do to protect your wealth. But to understand the crash, we have to go back to the setup. We have to rewind the clock. Go back to February 2022. Russia invades Ukraine. The West decides to fight back, but not with soldiers. They fight with banks. The United States and Europe basically pressed a delete button on the Russian economy. They kicked Russia out of SWIFT. If you don't know what SWIFT is, think of it as the plumbing for the world's money. It's the pipes that move trillions of dollars every day. The West cut the pipes. Then they froze $300 billion of Russia's cash sitting in banks. They sanctioned the billionaires. They sanctioned the oil companies. The message was clear. You are done. No more dollars, no more euros. Good luck surviving. Most experts looked at the math and said Russia was finished. They expected a total collapse. But Russia did something clever. Something nobody saw coming. They didn't collapse. They just turned around. They looked east. They went to China. It seemed like the perfect backup plan. Within a few months, the Russian ruble and the Chinese yuan replaced the dollar for almost everything Russia bought and sold. It happened fast. By late 2024, Vladimir Putin went on television and bragged about it. He said that 90% of trade between Russia and China was now happening without the dollar. 90%. Sit with that number. That is two of the biggest economies on the planet doing business, swapping billions of dollars worth of goods, and not touching a single American greenback. Russia became the poster child for de-dollarization. It became a movement. In 2024, at the BRICS summit, Putin literally stood on a stage and held up a prototype of a new BRICS bill, a new currency. He waved it in the air like a flag. The message to the world was loud. The dollar is old news. We are building something better. And the market loved it. If you were stacking silver or gold, you loved it too. The logic was simple. If the world stops using the dollar becomes worthless. If the dollar becomes worthless, everyone needs a new place to store their money. Where do they go? They go to real assets: gold, silver. Central banks started buying gold like they were preparing for the apocalypse. They bought 863 tons in 2025 alone. Gold went from $2,000 to $5,500. Silver went from $24 to $120. If you bought in early, you felt like a genius. It felt like the easiest money ever made. But here is the rule of the jungle. When investing feels too easy, it usually means you are about to walk into a trap. While everyone was celebrating the death of the dollar, something else was happening inside Russia. Behind closed doors, the perfect plan was turning into a nightmare. This is the part the news didn't tell you. This is the key to the silver crash. When Russia dumped the dollar for the Chinese yuan, the world cheered. But inside the Russian banking system, the gears were grinding to a halt. By September 2024, Russian banks hit a wall. They needed Chinese yuan to pay for all the stuff they were importing. They needed cash to pay the bills, but there was no cash. The yuan just wasn't there. It got so bad that the overnight borrowing rate for yuan in Moscow shot past 200%. Let me explain what that means in plain English. Imagine you need to borrow money to keep your business open for one day. You go to the bank. The bank says, sure, we will lend you money, but you have to pay us 200% interest. That isn't a loan. That is a death sentence. Russian businesses literally couldn't get the currency they needed to survive. And then the Chinese banks made it worse. Big banks, Ping An, Bank of Ningbo, They stopped processing payments from Russia. They got scared. They saw the American sanctions and decided it wasn't worth the risk. They ghosted Russia. So Russia was stuck. They had tons of oil. They had tons of resources, but they had no money that worked. And that brings us right back to that leaked memo. Payments that used to take 24 hours were suddenly taking 18 days. 18 days. Imagine running a business. You have employees to pay. You have supplies to buy. But the money you earned 3 weeks ago still hasn't shown up in your bank account because the banking system is choking to death. That is a nightmare. But the delay wasn't the worst part. The worst part was who Russia was stuck doing business with. Russia thought China was their partner. But China is a shark. And sharks smell blood. China realized very quickly that Russia had burned all its bridges with the West. They had nowhere else to go. And here is the golden rule of negotiation. When you have zero other options, you do not get to set the price. The person sitting across the table owns you. China started squeezing hard. They forced Russia to sell them oil at a massive discount, 23 to 29% less than the rest of the world pays. Then they demanded natural gas at prices cheaper than what Russian citizens pay in their own homes. And then, in January 2026, China just stopped buying Russian electricity. No warning, no meeting, they just hung up the phone. They basically said, your prices are too high, we are done. Imagine you run a power plant, you have one customer, and one day they just stop paying. You are bankrupt overnight. This exposed the dirty little secret about the death of the dollar. The US dollar works everywhere. You can spend it in Tokyo, London, New York, or a tiny village in Africa. It is liquid, it moves fast. The Chinese yuan is not the dollar. It is trapped. It is controlled tightly by the government in Beijing. Russian companies were selling millions of dollars worth of oil and getting paid in yuan, but they couldn't spend it. They couldn't convert it. They couldn't use it to buy things from other countries. Think of it like getting paid in gift cards that only work at one specific store. You can't pay your mortgage with a gift card. You can't buy groceries with a gift card. That is what happened to the Russian economy. It was drowning in gift cards it couldn't use. The friction was eating them alive. Every time they tried to move money, they lost money. So look at the scoreboard. Russia left the dollar to become independent, but they didn't get freedom. They just traded one boss for another. They fired Washington and hired Beijing, except that Beijing is a much tougher boss. By early 2026, the Russian economy wasn't just slowing down. It was hitting a brick wall at 100 miles an hour. The government claimed inflation was 6%. That was a lie. Real inflation was running closer to 22%. The price of everything was skyrocketing. To keep the lights on, the government hiked sales taxes. They jacked up interest rates to 16%. If you are a business owner, a 16% interest rate is a death sentence. Construction stopped, manufacturing stopped. The only thing Russia was making was weapons. 40% of the entire national budget was going to the military. That is Soviet Union levels of spending. The civilian economy was dying. There was literally nobody left to hire because everyone who used to build houses was now building bullets. The money dried up. The war machine ate the economy. The Chinese trap snapped shut. And BRICS, the big savior, delivered absolutely nothing. So what do you do when your plan fails, your economy is burning, and your new partner is robbing you blind? You pick up the phone and you call the enemy. This is where the story gets absolutely wild. The man making the call is Kirill Dmitriev. He runs Russia's sovereign wealth fund. He is Putin's money man, and he has been sitting across the table from a man named Steve Witkoff, a special envoy from the United States. They started cooking up a deal, a surrender. Ukraine's President Zelensky was actually the first one to blow the whistle on this. His intelligence spies intercepted the communications. He saw the numbers, and he couldn't believe them. The deal is being called the Dmitriev package. It is worth $12 trillion. That is 4 times the size of the entire Russian economy. Bloomberg eventually got the memo. It lists 7 proposals, and every single one of them is more shocking than the last. These aren't just trade deals. These are desperate pleas for help. Proposal number 1, Russia wants to go back to the US dollar. Let that sink in for a second. The country that spent 5 years leading the global war to kill the dollar is now begging to use it again for energy deals. They are waving the white flag. Proposal number 2, aeroplanes. This sounds small, but it is critical. Sanctions cut off Boeing and Airbus parts. Russian airlines are currently ripping apart their old planes just to keep a few of them flying. They are desperate for American parts. Proposal number 3, energy. Russia is offering joint projects, Siberian gas fields, Arctic offshore drilling. They are basically handing America the keys to some of the biggest untapped energy reserves on the planet. But the 4th proposal? This is the one that scared me. This is about nuclear power. Proposal number 4, nuclear energy. This is massive. Russia is offering to open up its uranium supply chains. They are offering access to their nuclear technology. This is the kind of stuff countries usually go to war over, and Russia is putting it on the table as a gift. Proposal number 5, Artificial intelligence. This isn't about chatbots. This is about the new arms race. Whoever wins the AI war controls the future of military power. Russia is proposing to build it with America. Proposal number 6. Mining, lithium, copper, nickel, platinum, the stuff inside your iPhone, the stuff inside every electric car, the metal inside fighter jets. Russia is sitting on mountains of these minerals, and they are offering to share the shovel. And proposal number 7, this one is spicy. Russia wants to team up with America to push oil and gas. They want to crush the green energy policies coming out of Europe and China. They know exactly who they are pitching to. They are offering a deal that sounds like music to American ears. But wait, there is a cherry on top, a hidden sweetener that almost nobody is talking about. Remember that $300 billion, the Russian money frozen in European banks? The deal hints that this money could become a signing bonus for the United States. Essentially, take our money, just let us back in. That is 300 billion reasons for the U.S. to say yes. Western officials who saw the memo realized the strategy immediately. This isn't just a trade deal, it is a wedge. If America shakes hands with Russia on energy, why would America care about European sanctions? Russia is trying to break the alliance. They are trying to split the West in half. And on February 13th, it stopped being a rumor. Russia confirmed it. It is real. The country that screamed death to the dollar for 4 years is now begging for a life raft. Now I need you to listen closely, because what I am about to say is going to hurt. For years, the internet has told you one story. You have heard it 1,000,000 times. BRICS is coming. The dollar is dead. Buy gold. Buy silver. Watch the dollar burn. I heard it. You heard it. We all heard it. It was a great story. But stories don't pay the bills. Facts do. So what actually happened? At the 2025 BRICS summit in Brazil, the group released a 126-point declaration. Do you know how many times they mentioned de-dollarization? 0, not once. The biggest anti-dollar club on earth couldn't even say the word. Why? Because reality hit them in the face. India said the dollar keeps the world stable. Indonesia said, no thanks. Brazil refused to push for a new currency. They all looked at the math and realized something terrifying. Replacing the dollar is impossible. And then Donald Trump dropped the hammer. He threatened 100% tariffs on any BRICS country that tried to replace the dollar. That is an economic nuclear bomb. If India or Brazil loses the American customer, their economies collapse overnight. So what did they do? They folded, like a cheap suit. The dollar isn't just money. It is the operating system of the planet. Let's look at the scoreboard. Global reserves held in US dollars, 59%. Global reserves held in Chinese Yuan, 3%. That is not a competition. That is a rounding error versus a heavyweight champion. The dollar handles 89% of all currency trades. There is no BRICS currency. There is no BRICS payment system. There is nothing. The story is dead. The death of the dollar narrative just got its legs cut off. So here is the problem. You bought silver because you thought the dollar was dying. You bought gold because you thought BRICS was taking over. But now, the dollar is stronger than ever, and Russia is begging to come back. What happens to your portfolio now? This is the part that scares people, because the answer isn't what you think it is. Let me be straight with you. When Bloomberg dropped this story on February 12th, silver fell off a cliff. In 60 minutes, silver dropped 10%. It went from $83 to $74. Gold followed it down. It went from $5,100 to $4,900. But that wasn't even the worst day. There was a day even darker, a day that felt like the end of the world for silver stackers. 4% in a single day. The worst single day since 1980. Gold fell by over 11%. Why? Because Kevin Warsh was nominated as Fed chair. And Kevin Warsh is a hawk. He loves high interest rates. High rates are bad for gold. Investors panicked. Margin calls went out. Traders were forced to dump everything they owned just to stay alive. Silver went from $121 down to $64, a 45% crash. Gold dropped 21%. If you held through that, you know exactly what I am talking about. You know the pain in your stomach when you check your portfolio and see red. You know the sleepless nights. Now, I am not going to lie to you. The Russian news is bad for metals in the short term. If Russia starts buying dollars again, that creates demand for dollars. A strong dollar usually pushes gold and silver prices down. It makes it more expensive for other countries to buy. Plus, the BRICS narrative is dead. That was the emotional fuel for the rally. People were buying because they thought the dollar was ending. Now that fear is gone, and with Kevin Warsh at the Fed, interest rates are probably going to stay high for a long time. That makes bonds look better than gold. So, yes, expect more choppiness, expect more dips. That is the truth. I am not going to sugarcoat it. But now, let me tell you what I actually think. And this is where I need you to really lock in, because most people are looking at the price and missing the value. Silver already crashed by 45%. from 121 to 64. That is brutal. That is blood in the streets. But when I look at silver at $60 or $70, I don't see a panic zone. I see a buying zone. This is where the smart money quietly loads up while everyone else is running for the exit. Markets are messy. Silver might dip a little more. But when I zoom out, the fundamentals haven't changed one bit. Here's the math that no secret Russian memo can change. Silver has been in a supply deficit for years. We used 1.2 billion ounces last year. We only dug 1.03 billion out of the ground. That is a gap of nearly 200 million ounces every single year. We are using more silver than we can find. That math doesn't care about Vladimir Putin. That math doesn't care about the Kremlin. That math just keeps compounding. Silver is in everything. It is in solar panels. It is in electric cars. It is in 5G towers. It is in medical equipment. It is in the missiles being fired in Ukraine. Every electric vehicle uses 25 to 50 grams of silver. Every solar panel uses 20 grams. The world is building more of these things, not less. That demand isn't going away just because Russia decided it likes dollars again. And here is something most investors feel in their gut, but nobody says out loud. Physical silver is disappearing. The vaults in London and New York are emptying. The supply of big 1,000-ounce bars is shrinking. The gap between the paper price on your screen and the real price you pay for a coin is getting wider. That is not normal. When the paper price says one thing and the physical price says another, it means the market is broken. It means the paper market is losing its grip on reality. And when that grip finally snaps, price discovery shifts to the physical metal. That is when you see explosive moves to the upside. Central banks know this. China bought gold for 15 straight months. They aren't stopping just because Russia wants dollars. India isn't stopping. They are diversifying because they don't trust the system. Now, I know someone in the comments is already typing, "You are coping. The bull run is over." And look, if that is what you believe, I respect it. But answer me this one question. America has $38 trillion in debt. That number isn't shrinking. Whatever happens with Russia, that debt keeps growing. And at some point, that math catches up with the dollar. When it does, gold and silver will be the only lifeboats left. That is not speculation. That is history. And honestly, this deal with Russia is just a proposal. There is a massive gap between talking about a deal and actually signing it. Russia needs sanctions lifted. Washington has to agree. Europe has to agree. The war in Ukraine has to end. None of that is simple. None of that is quick. This could take years, or it could fall apart tomorrow. Now, here is something that blew my mind when I found it. I guarantee nobody has told you this yet. This is the kind of information that completely changes how you look at the silver market right now. It isn't about supply, it isn't about demand, it is about who is holding the silver, Russia. The same country that is currently on its knees begging to use the dollar again. The same country that just offered a $12 trillion peace offering. That same country has quietly started adding silver to its strategic reserves. We are talking about $535 million worth of silver. They have a multi-year plan to stack it deep and stack it high. Think about the irony of that for a second. In public, they are saying, please, let us use your banking system. But in private, they are hoarding hard assets. They are building a bunker, and they aren't the only ones. India has bought over 900 million ounces of silver in the last 5 years. That is a staggering number. That is more silver than what is currently sitting in the famous LBMA vaults in London. Saudi Arabia is doing it too. They are buying silver through ETFs. These aren't day traders on Reddit. These aren't guys on YouTube making predictions. These are nations. These are governments. Why are they doing this? Because they know the truth. You can freeze a bank account. You can sanction a wire transfer. You can print $1 trillion out of thin air, but you cannot freeze a bar of silver. You cannot sanction a gold coin, and you cannot print metal. So Russia is playing a double game. They want the dollar for trade, but they want metal for safety. That tells you everything you need to know about how the big players see the board. The dollar is useful, but metal is insurance. And this leads to the most important lesson of this entire story. Russia running back to the dollar doesn't prove the dollar is safe. It proves the dollar is a weapon. Russia didn't choose the dollar because it loves America. They chose it because they had a gun to their head. Their economy was crumbling. The Chinese Yuan trapped them. BRICS promised a revolution and delivered a pamphlet. So they surrendered. But here is what the king dollar crowd is missing. Every other country on earth watched this happen. China watched, India watched, Saudi Arabia watched. They saw America freeze $300 billion. They saw a major country get kicked out of the banking system overnight. They saw the dollar turn into a missile. And you can bet every single finance minister in every single country made a mental note. The dollar's powerful, but if we make America angry, they can turn it off. That fear doesn't go away just because Russia surrendered. That fear is exactly why central banks keep buying gold. They aren't buying it to make a profit. They are buying it so they don't die if the system turns against them. Now, right now, you are probably scared. You saw the crash, you saw the red numbers. You might be thinking, if the market crashed this hard, the big banks must be selling everything, right? You might think the smart money is running for the hills. But what if I told you they are doing the exact opposite? JP Morgan just released their latest forecast. They see gold hitting $6,300 by the end of this year. Goldman Sachs, they say $5,400. UBS, they see $6,200 by March. These aren't random bloggers. These are the guys who control the game. When JP Morgan sets a price target, billions of dollars move. And notice what happened after gold crashed from $5,600 down to $4,400. Did it keep falling? No. Buyers stepped in immediately. Gold bounced back above $5,000 within a week. Why? Because the people who manage real money know a secret. One leaked memo doesn't kill a bull market. It just creates a sale. Look at the silver supply. It keeps getting worse. Mines are closing down. Mexico just changed its mining laws and cut output by 5%. Russia's mining sector is crippled by sanctions. Meanwhile, the world is building more solar panels. The International Energy Agency keeps revising its forecasts higher. Every time they change the number, it means we need more silver. We are digging less out of the ground, and we are using more. That is a recipe for an explosion. So, yes, silver crashed. It hurts. It might bounce around for a while, but I have watched these markets for a long time, and the biggest winners are always the people who stay cool when everyone else loses their mind. Think back to 2020. Silver crashed to $12. People panicked. They sold at the bottom. But the people who bought at $12, they are sitting on massive gains today, even after this recent crash. The market punishes fear. It rewards patience. The war for the future of money isn't over. The dollar won a battle against Russia, but the war is long. Physical silver and gold are the only assets that no government can destroy. That isn't my opinion. That is 5,000 years of human history. So here's the bottom line. Short term, expect noise. Expect scary headlines. They want to shake you out. They want your silver cheaply. Weak hands always get shaken out. That is how the game works. But zoom out. Look at the debt clock. $38 trillion. Look at central banks buying gold. Look at nations hoarding silver while they smile and shake hands with America. Every single major correction in history was followed by higher highs. The people who folded always regretted it. The people who stayed the course were glad they did. This time isn't different. Everything points in one direction. And that direction is up. That is my honest take. But there is one final piece of this puzzle. One specific thing you need to watch for in the next few weeks that will signal exactly when the next rally begins. That is the board. That is the game. Now, it is your turn to move. I want to know where you stand. Are you folding your hand and selling? Or are you doubling down and buying the blood in the streets? Go down to the comments and tell me. Buying or selling? I want to see who has the stomach for this market. I read every single comment and I will be pinning the best ones. If this video helped you see the truth behind the headlines, do me a favor, hit that like button. It takes 1 second and it helps us get this message past the algorithm. But do not click off yet, because Russia is just a distraction. While the whole world is staring at the Kremlin, there is a much bigger bomb ticking right here in America. It makes a $12 trillion deal look like pocket change. I am talking about a $38 trillion problem that no treaty can fix. I recorded a video that exposes the exact moment this debt bomb is set to go off and exactly what it is going to do to the price of your silver. It is the most dangerous chart I have ever seen. You need to see it before the markets open tomorrow. Click this video on your screen. Right now, I will see you there.